Come out of the box.
It reminds me a lot of one of my very favorite articles about the Trump movement, written by Mr. Jamel Bowie, called "The Cruelty is the Point." And I think that the big thing about the cruelty being the point for so many of Trump's voters is, in fact, there's no convincing them that this is bad, because this is one of the things that certain kinds of Trump supporters really like about the movement, about what is going on, right? The idea that there are interlopers or enemies within who need punishing, and cruelty by the state is a feature, not a bug. And it is a sign of an unhealthy or an unsteady democracy, that we do not currently grow the white blood cells for an immune system to keep these people away from the mechanisms of power.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to On Your Left with Drill Sergeant Doug. That's me, Drill Sergeant Doug. And this is the political roundtable, but the kind that doesn't suck. You know, the kind that doesn't have people on just to spew one wing or the other's talking points without actually having anything meaningful to say. And this show is a very special one because it's really about what's been going on, not just in New Jersey, but all over America ever since this ridiculous regime has come to power. As our First Amendment rights are rapidly being shrunk into free speech zones, and the word free itself is buckling under the weight like Trump's pathetic weightlifting skit. Oh, right? It's buckling, and I think that the breaking point might be somewhere in Delaney Hall. So today, I have some very special guests, and we're going to talk about where we go from here. We're going to talk about how to move forward from here, what we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again, but also, how are we going to stop this now? What are we going to do? And as always, we have somebody who's been on the ground there, who happens to be a creator, but this time they've been protesting on the ground. Is going to have a lot to say. Chance, you've been on the ground there. Tell everybody who you are. We'll do short introductions, and then we'll get right in.
Yeah, I am Chance Meeting. I'm a writer and a filmmaker and a documentarian who has been documenting resistance movements since the beginning of 2025 with the second Trump administration. And I was just in New Jersey at Delaney Hall this past weekend, and everything that I saw on the ground. I was on the ground in Minneapolis for 2 weeks during Operation Metro Surge, on the ground when Alex Preddy was murdered, and, you know, saw the cruelty of ICE then when they shut down pretty much 6 city blocks and were just doing nothing but brutalizing peaceful protesters and gassing us and everything. What I saw on the 30th of May on the ground at Delaney Hall was worse than that. It was insane. And then the response from Governor Sherrill before what she said was going to happen with bringing the police there, saying that they were going to protect peaceful protesters, which was a lie, saying that they were going to protect their First Amendment rights, which was a lie, saying that they were not going to be as violent as ICE, which was a lie, and then afterwards saying that they did not use any projectiles, which was also a lie. I was standing right next to Ian Austin when he was shot. He was shot 6 times. And they were actively targeting him, all for using his voice. This was not ICE. This was the New Jersey State Police. The police are collaborating with ICE to protect ICE, to allow them to keep having innocent people in concentration camps in torturous conditions, and to brutalize the peaceful protesters who are advocating for the release of these innocent people.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about what you saw while you were there. That's so important. I just want to get everybody introduced. Tyler, tell everybody where you're running and who you are.
Absolutely. My name's Tyler Vandenberg. I'm a 7-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, former Jeopardy champion. I also just, as of this week, finished a master's in public policy degree from the Harvard Kennedy School. I've been campaigning for Congress for about a year now in the California 6th Congressional District, which is parts of Yolo, Sacramento, and Placer counties. One of the most diverse districts in America. I'm running since Prop 50 against a gentleman who until just a few months ago was a Republican and a reliable vote for the president and his MAGA agenda. He has now since become the only member of the House to say that he is a quote unquote independent, to try to get away from the fact that we are going to drive him out of office and hold him accountable for his actions in what he's done to enable the backsliding in our democracy and our current situation in this country by voting him out of office. It's going to be a very raucous and tight run election out here tomorrow. The primary is Tuesday, June 2nd, and I am very grateful to be here in the closing hours of the campaign to get a chance to spread the word.
And for the first time, we're going to have portions of this come out a week in advance, which will be actually tonight. Most of the time, this comes out the week after, but we want to make sure that the candidates here are getting some vision. So don't let that guy squirm out of that Republican vote. And lastly, we have, well, not lastly, I'm hoping we can get John Shue back, but lastly, right now, we have Director Ops, who is the Executive Director of Fight Against Fascism Organization. FAFO, gotta love a good FAFO. Give a little introduction.
Yeah, hi, how are you? And behind me is my husband. Everybody say hi, Tom.
What's up? Hi, Tom.
We just got back from Delaney Hall. I just need my pink bag. We just got back from Delaney Hall. I was on the ground Wednesday night for a bit, trying to help corral and keep people out of the street, because at that point in time there was still ongoing traffic down Dormius, the street that Delaney Hall is located on. Unfortunately, shortly after I left, I would say namely 20 minutes after that, a young woman was hit over the head with a baton and had her scalp lacerated. She has made a public statement, and she's with one of the indivisible groups down here in South Jersey. She's doing okay, so that's the good thing, but I wish her well. And then I know that there was a leg crush injury because ICE beat the protesters into oncoming traffic and a man's leg got crushed by an 18-wheeler. Those were the first two major injuries that I was made aware of. And I think the scariest thing had to be the taunting, right? So the motorcade that kept going in and out for no goddamn reason, the line of police officers that kept circling all of us, even them doing it with the horses and the police in riot gear, which Mikey Sherrill said was not there. I don't know if I'm just blind or I'm hallucinating, but one of us is not telling the truth.
Okay, well, let me catch up the viewers here. We had someone here who was running in, I believe it was the 6th District in New Jersey. His name is John Shue. And this is all my fault, guys. We had a whole nice conversation going on. None of it was recorded because I'm a failure. He was running on the Palestine issue. And I said that after hearing about what Chance had to say about what was going on down there, hearing what Director Ops has to say about what's going on there, I said, how long until the same idea that allows Palestine to happen, the same kind of thoughtlessness that we have towards human beings and otherizing and seeing them as others happens before that happens here. And Chance had a great answer. Then Tyler, I want you to respond to it, and then we can get back into the flow. And if you don't know who John Shue is, look him up. He deserves to be looked up. He had some great answers, and it was only my fault. But that's where you're coming in on now. Talk about it, Chance.
Yeah, I was just saying that same culture of normalizing genocide and dehumanizing people and othering people, America set the precedent for that. This country is built on genocide and ethnic cleansing and supremacist ideology. And that's the same type of supremacist ideology that we see that perpetuates the genocide of Palestinians with Israel. And it's already embedded in our culture, a culture that has never been able to reckon with that cruelty, that system of cruelty that has been allowed to fester in this nation. There's never been a real revolution where we have fundamentally changed the system that's allowed that to persist. That oppression has just evolved over time. And now we're seeing it come to a head right now. So when we talk about, the conditions for what's happening in Palestine happening here, I think that has happened and we're already seeing it happening now.
We've never reconciled with it. It's a big deal. We've put Band-Aids on it. We've made amendments and we've tried to, and those things that now many of them have just been struck down by the same Supreme Court to remind us that we never reconciled with it. We've been putting Band-Aids on it for 200 years, 250 to be exact. Tyler, I'd like to know your thoughts on what he's saying there.
Yeah, so I think what I would say to this is that it reminds me a lot of one of my very favorite articles about the Trump movement, written by Mr. Jamel Bouie, called "The Cruelty is the Point." And I think that the big thing about the cruelty being the point for so many of Trump's voters is, in fact, there's no convincing them that this is bad, because this is one of the things that certain kinds of Trump supporters really like about the movement, about what is going on, right? The idea that there are interlopers or enemies within who need punishing, and cruelty by the state is a feature, not a bug, for certain parts of the modern Republican movement, certainly for the MAGA movement in general. And what I would say about all of this is American history is long and includes lots and lots of eras and institutions which also ran on cruelty, right? This is a country that had plantations for a very long time. This is a country that had Japanese internment camps, right? And what that means to me is that it is a sign of an unhealthy or an unsteady democracy that we do not currently grow the white blood cells for an immune system to keep these people away from the mechanisms of power. A working, healthy republic that's actually founded on the ideas of freedom and justice and liberty for all ought to be able to maintain institutions and maintain a civic consensus against allowing people for whom cruelty is a method of governance we have to keep them as far away from the mechanisms of power as possible. And in a functioning democratic society, we ought to be able to do that. And it troubles me greatly that we are currently not only unable to do that, but we have watched some of the worst, cruelest people in our country seize the mechanisms of power and begin to use them indiscriminately against whoever they want.
How do we stop it? What does it take? What is the injection to help build these white blood cells? Because we can't just, if we're just worried about it, and if we're just at a round table to all say, hey, you know what? I can't believe this happened. Oh, well, then I can shut it off. What are we going to do? How do we stop this? What does it take to stop this? Can anybody give me a historical background on what it takes to stop this? Only thing I know is a daggone world war, and I'm hoping that's not the case.
A reset button is all I got. I was just going to say, I only got a reset button, but
I think that it's going to take fundamental radical change in the system of governance that we have, and the economic system that we have as well, because a lot of things that we see in this country, with the cruelty being the point, it's all to serve capital. It's all to serve the power and the control of the people who have consolidated the most wealth in this country. And it's going to take people understanding majority of people understanding that that is the problem.
Go ahead, director.
You're leading right into what I'm talking about, that the system is going to self-cannibalize if we don't figure it out.
Yeah.
Full stop. Here's and I'm going to just lay this out. So we've got data centers popping up all over the U.S. and their alleged use is saying that they're going to create jobs. The truth is they don't create enough jobs, or those jobs are taken by AI. If no one is working to buy the things that they want to sell to us, who the fuck is going to buy them?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? That's issue one. Issue two, if we stop needing, like Chance is saying, if we stop relying on the systems that are built by other people to enrich themselves, they will no longer have a bottom line. They're going to be scared, which is why I think that one of the reasons we need to continue building community and solidarity, as Chance has been saying, is Delaney Hall is no longer accessible. They cannot hear us. But strategically, they're located on a port. I guarantee you, if the truckers can't go anywhere, or if things can't get out of that port, they might change their tune. So it's also about changing your strategy. And I think that getting over that overwhelmingness of apathy on either side is going to be a uphill battle. And that is where Chance and I probably have some alignment, because I can see the wheels turning and I see some people getting it, but there are still some people who unfortunately are holding on to things inside our society that are broken and will not sustain us if we want to move forward.
Tyler, you're running to be a part of that system. What say you here?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to chime in, because I think that I would kind of kick in the alternate kind of institutional perspective here, which is, as a guy who is trying to use the power of Congress for good, I'm a strong believer that the republic itself is not yet lost, and we are not at a point yet where there is nothing to be done inside the structure either. I'm sure there are tactical or strategic agreements or disagreements that I could have with folks on this call about that particularly. But when we talk about the kind of long arc of American history and placing this in a historical context, I draw a lot of inspiration personally. I've been asked, who are your political role models? Who are the people who you look up to in American history? And invariably, I end up choosing Abraham Lincoln and Lyndon Johnson, because they align with the two periods of Reconstruction in American history. And to me, given the kind of structural crisis that we are undergoing right now, right, a decay in the function of one of the two major political parties, the rise of massive authoritarian extremism and fascist enablers on Trump's side of the aisle, over white nationalists and Christian nationalists in positions of power and influence in the administration. I draw a lot of inspiration from the fact that in times of abnormal and exceptional cruelty in American history, actually, the Republic itself, if we are willing to use its power in this way, has the ability to make massive political change to back up kind of the social change that's happening around it, right? So to me, social change, building solidarity, all of these things are excellent, but I am kind of a cynic in that I don't believe they can do everything that they are capable of without holding and wielding actual political power inside the American system and republic we live in. And here we go. Now we're getting into the debate, Director. I see your hand. I do want to finish this point.
No. I hear what you're saying. I'm only going to
let him finish the point.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought, and I
Okay.
got something for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and here's the reason that I draw so much inspiration from the previous two reconstructions, right? Because these are unfinished work. It was unfinished in the 1860s and 1870s, right, with the Krupp bargain of 1877. It was unfinished in the 1960s, and we are currently watching the decay of the Second Reconstruction by the Supreme Court, ripping it apart. This, to me, is where the American Republic, as slow as it is to react, as difficult as it is to make structural change, if we can build both the social power and the political power to make structural change in the American Republic, this is where I think of things like constitutional amendments that fundamentally alter the scope of who is protected by the American government and can help us to move towards a more equitable future, right? I don't think anybody now, well, maybe some Republicans would dispute this, but I don't think anybody now would say in good conscience or in good faith that, say, the Reconstruction Amendments, right, 13, 14, 15, are not fundamental to the way our country is run at this point. They will always be under attack by the right-wing movement in how we do these things. But to me, it is essential that while we have a window to use the U.S. government for good, not only that we seize it.
Oh, he lost it. Mrs. Ops, I'd like to hear what you have to say. He'll be back on.
Okay, so I mean, he's drawing inspiration from two very unique individuals. I'll keep the personal comments of those individuals, but I do want to.
Right. You lost it with the internet, Tyler. We on to Mrs. Ops.
Go ahead. My point was finished in its entirety. Please, your turn.
I just wanted to point out that one of the people you draw inspiration from for Reconstruction, I can understand why you would delineate to them, but I want to point out that at least in the aspect of Abraham Lincoln, excuse me, he was only looking to keep the United States united. He did not care. He said if he could have kept the slaves enslaved and done that, he would have done so. So I know that's probably not what you were thinking about when you were referencing the ideologies of Reconstruction, but that's immediately where my mind went, because the people who look like me, that is what we think of, because we've been used as pawns. Our bodies have been used for labor, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that the confines of government and political power aren't necessary, because you can go look at New York City right now. Mandami's doing a fantastic job. So I think that what we need is a shift from the standard of the binary system that we are currently in and have always existed in, and we need to broaden that spectrum to open for new ideologies, because I don't think that socialism is a dirty word. I don't think that it's I don't think it's awkward or radical to want to care for your neighbor. But I do think that what we've been dealing with is the media, the disinformation campaign, and the lack of just like education system and structure throughout the United States. It's caused all of this. So I would like to see a way forward through reformation, but my concern is with this current administration, we're not going to get there. And what's going to be left when it's turned to trying to for the next person that's elected? That's my concern, if we even get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say something in response to that as well. The status quo that somebody like Abraham Lincoln was trying to protect is a lot of what we're seeing with congressional Democrats that we have right now, because of the structure of power that we have, the system that we have that literally got us to this point in the first place. When you see congressional Democrats not actually putting up any type of fight, it's because they're still trying to protect that system, protect that status quo that is in desperate need of that fundamental radical change. And if we don't have that, then we will just be perpetuating the same things with somebody else who's going to do it in a much cleaner and palatable way, because it's still going to be serving the exact same system of capital.
Here's the thing. You mentioned Abraham Lincoln, and on a whole other side of what he was thinking or why he did it, he let him go. Instead of saying, you guys are going to pay restitution, you guys are going to pay your slaves, you guys are going to give that the 2 acres and a mule or whatever the heck it is, and you're going to be punished. You cannot come anywhere near the courthouse again. You cannot come anywhere near the house of government again. Instead, he said, it's all water under the bridge, and he let this fester. The same thing happened with the J6 people. But they get pardoned. Everything is now festering. And what happens is we are at the precipice. And I'd like to know, as Lincoln is one of your people that you're looking to, when you get there, I need to know that that's one of his decisions that you will not follow through on.
Yeah, so I get to nerd out a little bit about the meaning of the Civil War and the Reconstruction. So thank you all for the opportunity. First of all, I want to go back, because one of the last things that I heard before the audio disconnected is Director's correct point that at the time of the first inaugural, Lincoln was saying, yes, if I could, maintain the whole nation, if I could bring it back in with all the slaves, still in chains, I would do it. If I could do it without fighting war, I would do it. Like, he was absolutely saying that in 1860 and 1861, about the time Fort Sumter was occurring. But between the first inaugural and the second inaugural, his second inaugural, when he's coming back into power at the close of the war, he's using phrases like, if every drop of blood spilled by the bondsman's lash needs to be repaid in kind by the sword, so must it still be said that the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. The conversion of the Civil War, the adaptation of Lincoln and his government over the course of the war from this is a war to maintain the political integrity of the Union to, in the middle, the Emancipation Proclamation and then the 13th Amendment, and this becoming a war about the destruction of the institution of slavery because no other change would have been adequate for the amount of blood spilled in the contest of the actual war, right? That conversion, that adaptation in Lincoln is the thing that I greatly admire, right? He comes in kind of a machine politician representing a cause that is for abolition, right? But wins in a four-way political contest, a split vote, one of the most split in American history, to take power, loses the South, and then has to fight with the South all this time until he and his cabinet and the army and the people of the North recognize that there is no resolution to this war that is commensurate to the sacrifice besides the absolute annihilation of the institution of slavery. But the other thing that I would say is it is true that after the war, there was this sense in Lincoln of himself, right, that, well, if Jefferson Davis escapes or if Robert E. Lee doesn't, get hanged, that's not so bad. But actually, none of those decisions were Lincoln's to make. He died right at the end of the war in his assassination, and those decisions were made by Andrew Johnson, an inveterate, terrible president, a sympathizer with so many of the Southern causes. He himself was from Tennessee, the one Southern senator to remain in power during the war, who remained with the Union, and a terrible choice. If I had my way, having like Thaddeus Stevens or somebody in that position, or Hannibal Hamlin or Benjamin Butler to say, no, actually, we're going to hang Robert E. Lee for what he did, right? We are going to, throw Jefferson Davis and the cabinet in jail or worse for treason, right? Like those measures should have been taken, but they were not taken because we didn't wield between 1865 and 1869 the mechanisms of American power towards justice. They were actively inhibited by President Andrew Johnson, who inherited it after Lincoln's assassination. And eventually that was rejected by the Northern public by electing Ulysses S. Grant, who spent 8 years of his presidency sending the army into the South to absolutely crush the Klan and make sure that Reconstruction happened to its fullest extent, right? This is the time period where we have black faces in every state legislature in the South. It's the time period where, black legislators are actively contesting the governorship of Southern states, right? The Freedmen's Bureau exists. All of these are much more in line with the sort of vision of reconstitution and justice that I support, right? Also, in the civil rights era, we know that in the 1950s and 1960s, starting with Brown v. Board and the deployment of the 101st Airborne to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then all the way through to like the middle 1960s, it is only a strong federal government that is active in the pursuit and cause of justice that can bring the most reactionary, the most inveterate political forces in our country to heal and to ensure justice for all. This to me is the real inspiration, the real legacy of Lincoln, of the Johnson administration, right? We can talk all day about how Lyndon Johnson was not a good guy, personally necessarily. The Vietnam War was an absolute disaster, right? Like I'm not here to apologize for his personality, right? But if we accept the idea that a bad person,
on the throne,
okay, yeah, right. Like not crazy, good stuff. I'm not about to apologize for any of that.
Unorthodox, but
unorthodox.
Unorthodox is about the nicest way to describe it that I can imagine. But if we think of the idea of the use of the American Republic, the American government, the systems of our Constitution for justice, then these time periods are great inspirations to me, because we know that after as many abuses we can possibly imagine, right? Like after decades and decades and decades of the institution of slavery poisoning American politics, that there was this moral rebirth, that the federal government could transform itself into, at least for a time, maintaining through legal and military and political force. And then after the 1960s to do the same with segregation and the death of Jim Crow. Like, these things to me show that if we are willing to hold power in the American government, if we are willing to use the American government as a tool for good and for justice, we actually have one of the greatest systems in the world to apply that justice if we are willing to seize power through the institutions that are available to us.
Go, 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 resist, resist, resisting, resist, fuck this shit's going down, that's right here, right now, the political drain. Just the news you need, nothing driven by greed, no sipping Kool-Aid, Sims cooking on that.